Hello, Calaveras County, and welcome to another edition of Mondo Calaveras. I'm your host, Mike Taylor. Now, you know, if there's one thing we like to do on this show, it's keep track of what is fun to do around here. And you're going to have to go to Tuolumne County in order to see today's guests. But probably many of you already have, and you know that when you go to Sierra Repertory Theater, you're going to see something good. I am very pleased to welcome Scott Viets and Jerry Lee, both from Sierra Repertory Theater over in Tuolumne County. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, it's one of those I don't know where to start kind of things. Scott, you are the artistic director.
Correct.
And what does that mean at a theater company, especially one the size of Sierra Rep? Because you're operating 2 houses and you do 8 shows a year?
8, sometimes 9, possibly 10, depending on the season. Artistic director is responsible pretty much for everything you see on the stage, meaning not only the shows that are being produced, but then all the technical aspects. So I'm in charge of hiring staff for like designers, lighting designers, set designers, costume designers, in addition to all of the actors. And so everything that you see in a show it falls under my umbrella as far as the quality.
Even if you're not directing that particular show?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And Jerry, this almost sounds like a letdown, but you're an actor who's appearing in State Fair right now. And some folks may remember, if you got over to Sierra Rep last year and saw The Drowsy Chaperone, which Scott starred in, Jerry played Adolfo, who stole the show and made no apologies for it. That was one heck of a performance. It was just something else. Just such a wonderful show. In a review that I wrote, I said, I think it's the best show I've ever seen Sierra Rep do. And it was because of, a character like yourself who shows up. So as an actor, what's it like to come and kind of visit Sierra Rep for a while?
I certainly wasn't expecting this to be a part of this production. And it was such a happy surprise because I love the movie so much, and I was really happy to explore what this stage musical of the story is. Sierra Rep is a ton of fun. Everyone, we were talking about this the other day, like cast members who are already asking, when they can be a part of another production. People really love it up here. While we were doing Drowsy Chaperone, one thing that kind of has stuck in my memory was the actress playing the Drowsy Chaperone at a talkback said that she admired how much integrity this theater has and the work that they produce, because it's kind of a stretch, believe it or not, it is a stretch for some companies to produce shows like the Drowsy Chaperone, or what else do we have, like All My Sons, Robert Bridegroom, which is coming up later in their season. And it's true. It's really nice to work in a company that will give you, this kind of work. Let you delve into those characters that not everybody is so willing to take a chance on. And
they actually provide housing for you and some transportation and the whole 9
housing
yards.
And transportation. They want to keep you up here.
That's right.
It's a one-way ticket.
Yeah, that's right. They don't let you leave the county, right? It's and that's something that I've heard, and Scott and I, we've talked a couple times about it. Sierra Rep is kind of on the national radar screen for actors, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And why is that? And maybe Jerry can help answer that question too, but what do you attribute that to?
Because we bring in 98% of our actors from all over the country. So we cast our net very wide. And because of the innovations with technology and the internet, we're now able to do auditions via YouTube and or people doing their own videos and uploading them or emailing them. It's so quick now.
Yeah.
So we're seeing talent that we would have only seen if we had physically gone to New York.
You used to do that, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. This is a lot more cost-effective
to
just have people send their own videos. So I do miss out on those trips, but it's just worked out for us and for the actors as well. So we bring in people from all over the country, in addition to our own great local talent. But we have people in this show from Florida, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles.
My gosh.
So the whole spectrum.
That is a wide net.
Yeah.
You definitely hit all four corners. So, Jerry, as you come to visit, do people think, oh my gosh, I'm going to nowhere Northern California, but there happens to be this theater troupe that's, doing this great work?
Well, I'm sorry to cut
no,
you
that's
off.
okay. What?
I'm actually from Northern California.
Okay, so
I'm from
you're
the Sacramento area.
There you go.
But I was aware of Sierra Rep while I was growing up. When I was in high school, I would visit their website all the time because I knew that there was this kind of place. It was really interesting to me. We have our own professional theater scene in Sacramento, but I don't know what it was about Sierra Rep and some other ones from the Bay Area that stood out to me so much. But I loved going to the website and knowing that this little gem was up here. And then I had a friend working up here after I went to college, and decided to come up and finally saw what the really what the work was, and that was
the
great.
theater is a rather, I don't want to say exclusive to suggest that people are excluded, but it's a pretty everybody knows everybody kind of club, isn't it?
Pretty much. I mean, nationally, that's the case because, one actor works here, then they tell their friend, and they tell their friend, and so on, and so on, and so on. So that's why we do have a reputation in New York. When we put casting notices out, people will go, "Oh, didn't you work there, Jerry?" "Yes, I did. How was your experience?" "It was great. You should submit." And so that's why it's always good to treat your actors well and to also put them in a good show and, make it a rewarding professional experience because it is a small world and they will talk. Yeah. And that's what you want. You want your reputation like any business.
To speak for you.
Absolutely.
Sure. Well, and that's especially going into your artistic director duties. How do you go about picking 8 shows out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that must float by your desk or cross your eyes, especially since you're looking for them? How do you come up with a whole season of shows?
That's a loaded question, Mike. It's the most important and difficult decision that we make, of course, because the decision of whatever show we are doing in a season affects, our livelihoods, our audience, the actors, our staff, and so we go about it. In fact, we're in the middle of this right now. I just had a meeting this afternoon.
Had a feeling. That's why I asked.
And this is Dennis Jones and Sarah Jones and myself, the three of us. And Dennis and Sarah Jones are the founders of Sierra Rep. 37 years.
There's something else.
I know.
Well, he talked at Calaveras High School when I was attending there and he was teaching. He said, "I want to found a theater company in the Mother Lode." And lo and behold, like you say, 37 years later, here we are.
Yeah.
It's something else.
It really is. It's something I take great pride in being a part of this tradition. And I've learned so much in my tenure here as well. But we are in the middle of coming up with the season. We're an unusual theater that some people aren't aware of, the fact that we operate 2 theater spaces simultaneously all year round. And especially then doing the type of shows we do. We're not just a Shakespeare company. We're not just a musical theater company. We have a motto, which is something for everyone. So when you have 2 theaters and you're doing 8 to 9 shows, it really comes down to what haven't we done before? What's new out there? What do we think our audiences are going to like? While still wanting to push creatively and artistically ourselves to do things like All My Sons or, Macbeth. Things like that. And it's important for us so we can do big musicals, comedies, dramas. After 37 years, you kind of run out of shows that you haven't done,
That's right.
And we're always looking for kind of the new stuff that's coming off of Broadway. But the Broadway trend in the last, 5-10 years are these kind of mega shows that are technically difficult to do, and also the rights just aren't available.
No.
So people say, "Why aren't you doing Mamma Mia? Why aren't you doing Phantom of the Opera?" You can't.
You can't. Yeah. You're only going to be able to see the touring company if you were able to get tickets to that in San Francisco.
Exactly.
And but so for a company of your size, what's the annual budget for Sierra Rep?
1.7 million.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not cheap to do this.
No, and we have a rather large staff for a company our size as well. So we have about 14 full-time employees, and then we have 3/4-time employees, part-time.
Oh, gosh.
So it takes a lot to operate, these two spaces, and yet our build crew, our set crew, and our costume crew, they build all of them.
Yes.
So we also have to think about what show is at what theater at what time of year, and we then look into a crystal ball and we try to project, because we have to balance a budget as well. How many people are going to come? Do we think will come to this show?
Sure.
And sometimes we hit that mark or exceed it, and sometimes it runs maybe short. It just depends on. You're trying to get your finger on the pulse of what audiences may or may not want.
Well, and I guess I'll ask, and I'm not trying to trap you in anything here, but it's not the quality of the shows, I think, that has ever been the problem at Sierra Rep.
Thank you.
It's maybe that show just didn't, like you say, happen to click with the audience. Is that kind of what you've felt has happened when maybe a show hasn't pulled like you thought it was going to?
Yeah, you never know. And it also depends on, it could be audience's taste, but something like Drowsy Chaperone, we were nervous.
And nobody knew what that show was.
No.
Was it word of mouth that made that show work?
Absolutely.
In the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what we did, which we can't regret, but prior to even rehearsing it, we made the decision to take a week, almost 2 weeks off of the run, because we were nervous that it wasn't going to perform.
Wasn't going to pull.
And so then, the show opened, and people were coming back 3, 4, 5 times, and the houses just kept growing, and we could have run it, actually.
Another 4 weeks.
Probably. But you never know.
Yeah.
We just did My Fair Lady, a really nice production of that, and it was a little under of what our guesstimate would be for that, and you just don't know why sometimes, theater tastes are constantly changing, but again, that's why we try to do so many different types of shows as well.
Some musicals and some straight plays and just kind of mix it up that way. Jerry, do you have a kind of play that you prefer doing as an actor? I mean, musical versus, say just a text comedy or a drama or...
Well, yeah, I mean, that actually is what what I prefer are plays with classic language in them, like Shakespeare and other kinds of verse plays. That's what I'm passionate about. But I'm lucky enough to have a good singing voice and get cast in a lot of musicals, which is great. I love musicals. I love musical theater. And I feel very, very lucky to be a part of it. But I do very much love Shakespeare and classic early theater.
You like needing the translator with you.
Yeah.
I joke with Graham Greene, who operates Murphy's Creek Theater here, that after about 20 minutes, my brain has made the shift, and I can now understand that you don't say the sky is blue, you say it had an azure tone that reminded me of someone's eyes, and he meant it's blue. So,
I saw that play.
As an actor, what pulls you into a role, and then how often are you surprised as you're working up the show and it's about ready to open at what you might have discovered with what you're going to do with that character?
For me, it's different with every production. When we were starting to work on this, I was doing 2 shows at the same time when we started working, and I told Scott in the beginning, I promise I'm not being lazy. I'm not being a lazy actor, but this role is very different from what I usually play, and I didn't know exactly how I was going to fit into it, and I expressed to him that I was going to need to take a little time easing into it and navigating my way through it. This one was exciting for me because it's a dance role, and I I've never done a dance role before.
Oh,
you know?
really? Okay.
Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun challenge and a really fun learning experience. And I'll be honest, this is one of the first times that I've opened a show and been like, got a little jittery right before going on stage.
Yeah.
Because it's something new in front of an audience that I've never really tested out before. And to be even more honest, it took this whole last week to really get very comfortable, singing and dancing in front of an audience instead of just singing and in front of an audience.
Yeah.
So it's
Adolfo.
But he was. I'm sorry to interrupt. He was doing Tony in West Side Story, so he's doing one of the hardest singing roles in the musical theater canon, and then flip flopping to then a song and dance role in Rodgers and Hammerstein State Fair. So it's a lot.
And that was going to kind of be my next question: is how does your brain? I mean, do you have to? If it's Tuesday, I must be this guy, and if it's Wednesday, I'm the other guy.
The weirdest thing about that was driving up to any of the rehearsals, driving up to a performance or to a rehearsal, and thinking, "Oh, I can't wait to tell so and so this story. They're not in this cast; they're in another show." Or can't wait to. Nudge so and so, but it was. I really don't know how to answer it. I'm just like, okay, that's your job. You better get it in there. You better get your job done.
That's what you do.
Yeah. And it was a little easier for me because I know West Side so well, and I know this story pretty well. Knew the music pretty well right off the bat. So that was.
Especially like you say, and the movie is not incredibly, but it's somewhat different than this stage version. Is that right? Or
yeah. It follows the same plot points. I think the major adjustment was made for the story centers around the Frake family, and I think that the major difference from the movie is the brothers storyline.
Oh, okay.
With Emily Arden.
It's also not as musical. That's what's interesting, looking at the 1942 movie whenever it came out. The stage version has many more musical numbers and dance numbers and production numbers that aren't in the original movie. They're kind of used, some of the songs are used as underscore or kind of just... kind of a ballad or a throwaway song. So they opened it up, actually, for Broadway. So,
and added all the bells and whistles, so to speak.
Right.
Because there are, folks, if you get a chance, and you've got some time, because it plays through the middle of August?
Yes.
August 7th.
State Fair is, the beginning of August, but get over there Wednesdays through Sundays. And is that pretty close to a Broadway schedule?
No, Broadway does Tuesday through Sunday, and they do 10?
10 shows?
I don't know.
Yeah, but they do many double shows. Our schedule actually is kind of light, even compared regionally. A lot of regional theaters will do 8 to 10 performances. We can only do 6 because of our contract with Actors Equity. And so.
And that's part of the other reason SRT is on the radar, so to speak, is because you do offer that kind of connection, right, to actors?
Yes, Actors Equity is the professional union for stage actors and stage managers, and it's anyone who is working professionally on Broadway or regionally is a member of Actors Equity. It's what actors aspire to. It's kind of like how would you describe it? The Olympics, that you want to get that.
Getting your card, so to speak.
It's a big deal because it validates, an actor in getting their card, that I'm professional. You're a card-carrying union member. You get pension, you get health. And, that's important in the acting profession because you don't always get that. So that is one of the things, that we pride ourselves on being professional. But, we're professional, I think. We treat our non-equity the same as equity. We have a standard and treat everyone the same. And, whether we had the union status or not, I like to think we would still
pretty darn
act that way.
Close, yeah. The in a previous show we were talking that for every actor you see on stage, there's 3 to 5 to more people behind the scenes who have worked to help that show get to that point. Is there some kind of magic number in that formula? I know it kind of depends on the show, but how many people are behind the scenes compared to, say, the 10 actors that are out on the stage?
Well, I mean, if you're talking just about stage crew, it can vary from 3 people backstage to 6. But there are so many decisions that are made, and it would be interesting for an audience to know, like, what gets us to opening night, and it's what we have in tech. So the director will spend, a weekend with the lighting designer and the stage manager, and what they're not aware of is that every single cue, and there are, I think, 500 light cues in State Fair alone, that every single look has been orchestrated and planned out, and you have to sit there and you have to figure out how do we get the actors to be lit, etc. So that's a huge behind-the-scenes thing, too, as well as then you have the costume designer and all the stitchers who are making the costumes in the shop. You've got the stage manager in the booth. You've got the sound op if it's a musical. So, I mean, it's a dozen people, 10 to 12 people.
Acting along with the actors, basically.
Yeah.
And then, are there, how many people are back there helping you do some of these 10-second clothes changes? State Fair doesn't have as many, but other shows you've done, it would seem to me, and I also know that especially in the East Sonora stage, there isn't much space back there behind what the audience sees. So it would seem like you'd need 3 people back there to yank that suit off and somehow pin that one on.
Well, it's all choreographed as well.
It is,
the backstage, and that's a whole other show in and of itself. When I went on this past weekend, I'm out front, so I'm just seeing what I staged and choreographed. The backstage, we have an assistant stage manager and the crew and the stage manager who then have to choreograph what is happening. So, like, there are scene changes or quick changes for costumes, but every actor and crew member has to know exactly where they're going at one point, so it's not a train wreck.
Yeah.
So when I went on, I just saw this whole backstage show that was, even I was like, oh, I had no idea that was all happening.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So from your perspective as the director out in the audience, you didn't even know that all that was going on back there.
No,
that's something.
It's fascinating.
Jerry, have you had a moment during a show where someone has just completely forgotten what's going on, where they are, what the line is, and the rest of the cast has to help them? Notice I'm not suggesting you did that, but we hear some of these horror stories that hopefully don't involve cell phones, but have you had a moment like that where kind of the cast had to sort of help?
Yeah, there are
somebody?
certainly moments where, when you get into when you find your rhythm in any production, where anything that disturbs that feels like the end of the world. It's like, oh no,
What are we doing?
Yeah. And then it usually gets back on track, like a dropped line or a missed entrance or something. And then afterwards, whatever guests or production team is out in the audience, you'll ask, hey, what about that moment when so-and-so dropped a line? They're like, what? I didn't even notice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't think of anything too crazy in recent events. I could certainly make one up, but it's probably me. No, nothing too crazy.
And there's
with
a
this
month or
one.
more to go on State Fair, so who knows? You might get lucky. I know. And speaking of the rest of the year, what else is coming up? What are you looking forward to, Scott?
We're doing a show that I've wanted to do for a long time called The Robber Bridegroom. And it was just revived on Broadway last year? This year. And I grew up with the score, really loving it. I've never seen it. I didn't make it out to New York to see this. But it's always been one of my favorite scores, and it's this kind of 18th century Southern fairy tale that I think is a lot of fun. It's madcap. Nice. It's very beautiful music. It's a little wacky. And again, it's unknown. And I love as a director, the opportunity to direct something that is lesser known. So there isn't this expectation. You know, if you're going to do a King and I or Fiddle on the Roof, there's, of course, a certain expectation. So to be able to have a blank slate is fun. So I'm looking forward to that. Cyrano.
I was going to say, that's got to be fairly liberating, I would think.
Absolutely.
To not have to jump through those Fiddler on the Roof hoops that everyone knows.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot more freedom as a director, you know, where you can let your imagination run wild.
Sure.
You know.
And is that going to be at the Fallon House? It is. Well,
Yes.
that makes sense, having 1800s theater, stage an 1800s show. You guys have done that quite a few times. In fact, last year's Christmas Carol set in Columbia was fantastically done.
Yeah.
It just had that magic, and I know that actors and others have told me that they believe that theater is haunted at the Fallon House anyway. So there was a nice nod at the beginning of that show to that, too. It was just really nicely done. Jerry, what are you doing the rest? I know you have the rest of the summer here in the Mother Lode, but what do you get to do after that?
Well, I'm going to Walnut Creek in the Bay Area for a Christmas Carol later this year.
Oh.
And then I'll be directing I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change at Sacramento Theater Company.
Oh, nice.
And I'll be a part of another musical there.
Have you directed before?
I have, but not on an equity main stage. So this is a very exciting directing debut for me.
Well, enjoy that.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. And what else is coming up this summer, Scott?
We're excited about Cyrano. This has been on Dennis Jones's and Sarah Jones's bucket list for a long time, and we never could find the right opportunity, and we finally found it this year. It's a beautiful story. Dennis excels with these kind of, you know, lavish, epic, stories. Yeah. So I'm really anticipating just fantastic work from him on this because he's so passionate about it, and he's been sitting across from me in the office working on the set. So it should be very exciting.
And his sets are just ridiculous.
He's brilliant. He is a brilliant set designer, one of the most talented I've ever worked with. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's great.
And then we have Beehive is coming back.
Beehive opens pretty soon.
We start rehearsals in a week, and that's Russell Garrett, who directed Drowsy Chaperone.
Okay.
So that's going to be fun.
So rehearsals start in a week, and that show opens on July?
Yes. Beehive opens on July 23rd.
Wow, so
it's
that's
2 weeks.
pretty quick for rehearsal.
We do that pretty fast.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. And I'm going to turn and talk to the audience because if they don't know, they need to get over to Sonora and Columbia and see a Sierra Repertory Theater show. They produce some of the best musicals, whether you've heard of it or not, whether it's a Drowsy Chaperone or a state fair. So I'm going to tell you, go enjoy some theater. Thanks for joining me on Mondo Calaveras. I'm Mike Taylor. Enjoy.